Hello there, and welcome everyone. Today we're fishing the Tallapoosa River in Georgia because we're targeting Tallapoosa bass for the Georgia Bass Slam. The Tallapoosa River drainage is of course part of the Mobile River Basin. Tallapoosa bass are only native to the Tallapoosa River drainage above the fall line, and there are only 3 native species of black bass in the Tallapoosa River drainage. The Tallapoosa bass, which is the upland species, the Alabama bass, and the largemouth bass. And in case you're new to the channel, I did want to talk about the Georgia Bass Slam for a minute. The Georgia Bass Slam is a program that Georgia DNR has to recognize anglers with the knowledge and skill to catch different species of black bass in different habitats across the state. Another reason or purpose of the Georgia Bass Slam is to stimulate interest in the conservation and management of native black bass and their habitats. To achieve a slam, anglers have to catch at least 5 different species in a calendar year. 5 is the minimum number required for a slam, or you can try to catch all 10 species on the list. Once you complete a slam and submit all of the required info, the Georgia DNR will send an envelope like this, and you'll get a personalized certificate and a letter that congratulates the angler on the number of species caught. You also get 2 free passes to the Go Fish Education Center in Perry, Georgia, a decal of every species caught, and a tape to measure your fish. They also add your name and the number of species caught to an annual list of successful slam anglers on the Georgia DNR website. Your name also goes into a drawing for a grand prize, which includes a framed print of Georgia black bass species and a lot of other really cool stuff. I do the Georgia Bass Slam every year. It's a fun challenge, and it doesn't cost anything to enter. You just need a valid Georgia freshwater fishing license, which is something I get every year anyway. So the Tallapoosa bass is an upland species of black bass. They're actually an upland stream specialist because they're only found above the fall line in the Tallapoosa River drainage. In the Micropterus genus, there are 7 upland stream specialists, and all of these fish were at one time classified as red-eye bass. The Tallapoosa bass, warrior bass, Cahaba bass, red-eye bass, and the Chattahoochee bass were all formally described as species in 2013. The Altamaha bass and Bartram's bass were both formally described as species this year. So all 7 are now officially described by science as separate and distinct species. However, the name red-eye bass is still used by many anglers as a general term when referring to any or all upland species of black bass previously classified as red-eye bass. I've tried to avoid doing that for the most part because I have this YouTube channel and I don't want to confuse people. When I talk about or describe red-eye bass, I want people to know I'm talking about the actual red-eye bass that's only native to the Coosa River drainage above the fall line. Also, when you use the name red-eye bass as a general term, it can lead some people to believe these are subspecies of red-eye bass, which is not the case. That's why I prefer upland species of black bass or upland stream specialists when I talk about these fish in general terms. I think it also more accurately describes what these fish are and what makes them different. But I did use the name red-eye bass a couple of times in this video, and I just felt like I had to address this and let people know it was used as a general term to avoid any potential confusion. So I hope you liked the video, and thanks for watching. Had one swimming with it. These fish sometimes bite funny in cold water. You can't always dismiss it as a small fish when you miss one. I've on several occasions had what I thought was a small fish bite and thrown back in there only to catch a much larger fish than I thought was there. And it bit the same way twice, so I was assuming it was the same individual. That's too big to be a red eye. Oh, look what it is, folks. Oh my gosh. So happy to have this fish. Y'all don't even know. This late in November to get one is really a gift. Let me document this fish for the 2025 Georgia Bass Slam before I somehow manage to lose it. Not a big one, but he's gonna make the 8-inch minimum. According to the Georgia Bass Slam rules, you're supposed to have one hand on the fish near the tail with and the mouth should be closed. But I have a hard time holding this camera, which is a chest mount. You know, you're supposed to kind of have it like that, technically, if you look at the rules. So there he is. He's, you know, 9 3/4 or so. Beautiful little Tallapoosa bass. They don't have as much color in the fall, you know, because of the cold water. But if you caught this fish, in, you know, around the spawn in April or May, it'd have a lot more color. You can see he's got a little coloration there. Those stripes around the gill cover that radiate from the eye. You can see that bluish green coloration and the crescent behind the eye. And I'm going to get an angler portrait pic real quick and release this fish. I don't want to keep him out of the water any longer than is necessary. So let me take that picture and I'll be right back. All right. See you, buddy. Thank you very much. All right. Got the Tallapoosa bass for the Georgia Bass Slam. I wasn't sure if we'd do it because it's kind of late in the year. Those fish, they're not real active in the late fall, winter. They just don't need, you know, they're already a small fish, and they just don't need very many calories to survive. So they can be pretty hard to catch, at least here in North Georgia. I'm not going to say they're impossible, obviously. If they were impossible to catch, I wouldn't even be out here. But we've had some warm weather recently, and it's been a lot warmer
this fall than it has than it typically is. You know, we've had highs in the 70s. A few days it was even in the mid to upper 70s, which is kind of rare. But the overnight lows have been pretty mild too. That's the other key. This time of year, when the nights are so long, those cold nights really chill the water a lot faster. So you got to watch the overnight lows as well as your daytime highs when you're thinking about the water temps. But you know, I'd say the water here is probably in the low to mid 50s. Some places, you know, it might even be warmer than that. It might reach the upper 50s in some areas, but you know, in the winter, this water can get down into the 40s, and I have seen water temps in the high 30s. So when it's like that, these fish, they don't really, they're the same temperature as the water, and they don't even have to eat really. So they just try to, they're just in survival mode, you know, trying not to be displaced downstream when the water's that cold. So I've caught shoal bass, you know, when the water temps were real low, but when you're talking about these upland species of black bass, like the Tallapoosa bass, man, they are really, I just haven't had as much luck during the really cold periods. And, you know, I have the most, when you're talking about stream specialists, upland stream specialists, like the Tallapoosa bass or even shoal bass above the fall line, a lot of the places I catch these fish in the winter have bedrock. You know, we've got a bedrock channel bend here, and not only do they, you know, is that a refuge for them? You know, they can get up under the rocks there, but you got to think about in the winter when the water comes up, you know, these fish need some kind of current break, and rock is way more effective as at blocking the current than you know, a single piece of wood or a log or a brush pile. So that's why a lot of these fish in the wintertime are going to be near these bedrock channel bends, or where you have an irregular bank with bedrock. You know, so that's something I'm always looking for when I'm out here. A lot of these areas you can find on Google Maps, you know, just with map study, you can locate areas with lots of bedrock. Or banks with bedrock. The other thing I'll tell you too is a lot of these areas, you know, because you have this bedrock, there'll be a ridge, you know, up on the bank. And if you look at a creek or a river, you know, a satellite or an aerial image of the stream, typically where you have those bedrock ridges, people don't build or farm, you know, so it'll be heavily forested. There may be a house at the top of the ridge, but you know, when you're looking for these areas, that's kind of something you can look for, areas that haven't been developed along the stream with lots and lots of trees. Typically those areas are like that. You know, they haven't been plowed or farmed because, you know, this bank is too steep. So they haven't been, you don't have any land development or clearing, you know, due to the, because there's a ridge there or a cliff. The other thing I'm always talking about when it comes to upland species of black bass is the substrate, you know, the bottom of the stream. You know, we've got some sun right here hitting the bottom right there, and you can see all that nice clean coarse gravel. So that's always a good something I like to see. I just fish around so much cover that the finesse worm is just a lot more efficient. Boy, fish just busted right there. I don't know if it was a bass, but something hit the water right there. There's still a lot of acorns out, and I've seen a lot of turtles too. There's one. Ah, it's another Tallapoosa bass. Now that I finally got one, we're gonna just start catching them left and right, I guess. This one isn't gonna make the 8-inch minimum, but I'm not gonna put another one on the board. But it's good to see that they're out here, and they are active. As you can see, you can still catch them. Whoop. Sorry, buddy. I don't know how much longer this 70-degree weather's going to hang around, but it's definitely, you know, the fish are the same temperature as the water, so it definitely helps with the late fall bite. Typically, these fish are almost impossible to catch. I get emails from people all the time asking me, well, different things, but as far as catching these fish, they really are typically much harder to catch, you know, this time of year because the water's a lot cooler. But we've just had some crazy warm weather, and they're not typically this active. I've only got 3 fish technically for the Georgia Bass Slam. I still need a Chattahoochee bass, an Altamaha bass, and the Bartrams. And now that I've got the Tallapoosa bass, I'm seriously thinking about heading down I-20 back to catch one of the other ones I need. I just don't know if there's enough daylight left to do that. You know, this time of year the days are so short. But if I'm going to do that, I need to do it right now. The other thing I try to do when the water's low and clear and you're dealing with cooler water temps, really any time of the year, but it's especially important, I think, in the winter, I try not to send out any waves, you know, pressure waves from the kayak or from just wading, you know, in the water. I think that really, I kind of sent out some little ones, but what you want to avoid are those big rollers. You know, when the fish are in 3 or 4 feet of water or less and it's clear, I think those waves really spook them. You know, these fish are, there's an acorn. A few black walnuts too around here. You got to watch out for those. Anyway, these fish, their number one enemy, I think right now, is, other than a human, would be an otter. Otters really can do a lot of damage in the winter. Late fall, winter, when these fish are basically trapped in these holes. I've seen fish before that disappear under rocks that almost looked like they had to turn sideways to get under the rock. Oh, wow. Got another nice Tallapoosa bass. Boy, check out the eye. Well, that fish's eye was red when I caught it. Now it's more of a crimson color or a burgundy. But I was gonna say that's why they got the name red-eye bass, but you know, that one's already. Eye color is variable in fish, so you never really want to use that as to identify any. And it can change just real quick, just that quick. So that's why it's not a reliable way to identify fish. Little Bama bass. The Alabama bass was actually described from the Alabama River drainage. That's why it's called the Alabama bass. And the first one they sampled was from the Tallapoosa River. A lot farther, not in Georgia, it was the Alabama part of the river, from what I've read. And see you, buddy. So that's why they're called the Alabama bass. They're actually not named for the state, but the drainage, the Alabama River drainage, because that's where they were. That's where the holotype, or the specimen that was used to describe the species, was collected from. So that's why Alabama River drainage, Alabama bass. Just like they name fish after the water body a lot. You know, Swanee bass, Guadalupe bass. Oh my. That's what happens when you're out of position to set the hook, folks. Out of position to set the hook. Because I was being lazy. If that was a Tallapoosa bass, I would probably be really upset right now. And it could have been a Tallapoosa bass. I wasn't able to confirm what type of bass that was. It just was not hooked long enough. Stole my worm. I'll tell you what I just figured out. Instead of just dragging this worm, the one that just jumped off a minute ago, a fish had came up to the surface. A fish came up to the surface of the water right there. I don't know if it was a shiner trying to get away from a bass or what the deal was. But I threw my worm over there, and as soon as it hit the bottom, I just kind of pulled it 3 feet up off the bottom, and it's only about 4 feet deep there, so I could see my worm, and I saw that fish come up and eat. He came up from behind a bedrock outcrop and ate that worm right when it was right when I had stopped pulling it, so it was basically starting to sink. And with that light weight, the 16th ounce weight, it just hung up there in the water column long enough that that fish came up and rolled on it, ate it, and was going back down with it. I set the hook and he jumped out of the water right there, well, and came off, obviously. So a minute ago, I made a cast over here to this pocket, and I just turned the reel handle 3 or 4 times real quick so the worm would kind of dart off the bottom. And before it sunk back to before it got back to the bottom, a fish had it. A fish had eaten it. So that pulling it and letting it hang there, and it's warm enough that these fish are starting to chase. They're kind of a little more aggressive than I initially thought. I'm kind of thinking about putting a jerkbait on there, a small suspending jerkbait, but there's so many leaves that that would just be a big headache, I think. Beautiful little Tallapoosa bass. Beautiful. Thank you so much, buddy. Have fun in that cold water. Now I'm fairly certain that fish would have hit a rooster tail, and or you know, any sort of inline spinner. He was out here kind of between these bedrock slabs. I was just kind of swimming that worm more or less. Just kind of swimming it and letting it sink in the holes. Oh, look what we've done. What have we done? What did we just do? Well, for a Georgia Tallapoosa bass, that's a good one. That is a really good one. Just under 12 inches. I've already got one for the Georgia Bass Slam, but that was a humdinger right there, and a great way to end the day. See you, buddy. Thank you. That's another nice one. I don't think this one is quite the length of that last one. Beautiful Tallapoosa bass. See you, buddy. I was actually going to measure that fish, but before I put it on the board, I wanted to give it some oxygen. And the fish, as usual, have other plans. That's okay. Got a light rain going. I hope it doesn't kill my microphone. I've had bad luck with equipment in the rain. I'm gonna have to put this camera up. It's starting to rain too hard. I just replaced this microphone. They're about 70 bucks a pop, so that's why you don't see me fishing in the rain. It's not these things aren't cheap.